And so he asks why when he sees the penguin run off into the interior of the continent towards the unforgiving mountains, which will certainly hold, beyond whatever mystery of experience may or may not be there for the penguin, certainly these mountains will hold for the penguin death. It seems apparent to me that there is no rational reason, by which I mean no mode of discourse, even as it must apply to a penguin's mind, no understanding that would justify such an action for us, broadly. Yes, some of us will suppose that penguins have the ability to desire death and some sort of a right to die, and I agree with this in an ostensible way, but the penguin cannot tell us that it wants to die. If the penguin misunderstood something, then that is a rational event. Misunderstandings are rational events in the sense that all experience is a direct perception of something or an understanding of something, and understanding is already in the title. But still, something had to be wrong with the penguin, inasmuch as you need a reason to want to die. It's unnatural to simply prefer death over life, so even if you suppose that the penguin chooses death deliberately, there is no way to justify the penguin's choice. In other words, if we assume that the penguin made a mistake and there's still the material factor of the penguin's incompetence or something like that, his individual inability to meet the moment. Even if the penguin was pursuing some conscious end, that end alone would never explain the penguin's behavior to us. If the penguin wanted to die, we would still assume something wrong with it. Whatever thoughts the penguin may or may not experience, there are things which are true from the point of view we have as informed humans. These things prevent us from saying, I guess it makes sense that the penguin simply felt like dying. Yes, that's possible, but it wouldn't have the sort of explanatory power we are looking for, the explanation of why it doesn't want something other than that, which our experience tells us that it should want fish or a nap or something like that. So, the penguin can't possibly give what we call informed consent, justified consent. He can want to die, but not in a way that we consider justified. Therefore, we are obligated to assume, to think about the penguin as though something must be wrong with it. If only that the penguin does not appreciate the gravity, so to speak, of its desire for death. Also, it does not show any signs of distress, so unless you assume the penguin is just being stoic, its rationalization for seeking death could only be an aberration of mind. When I first drafted this script, it was occasioned by someone having posted under the title something along the lines of, "Here is the original Penguin video." Someone posted the famous Herzog clip of, him asking the scientist about the penguin that runs off towards the mountains. Without understanding the context of the post, I just assumed the person was a fan of Herzog, or at least interested in the genealogy of the meme. Between drafting and recording this, I became aware of the social media post which spun the penguin's madness into an analog for American exceptionalism. If you force us into the analogy of the penguin, I suppose you're not allowed, in that case, it's not justified to believe that we have any good reason for doing what we do. You're obligated, if you treat us like the penguin, you have to suppose something is wrong with us. But I think the analogy fails in consideration of how divided we are. We are more like a rat king than a penguin, in my opinion, but that doesn't mean I disagree with the notion that America might appear mad to someone. I acknowledge the theoretical possibility of a person accounting for the division in American discourse and still deciding we are mad, but I wonder how well the penguin analogy would fit a nuanced take on the madness of America.